My mother didn't just hate my husband, she hated my future. She went to a dark place and used a rusted iron padlock to seal my womb, all so my older sister could be the first to give birth. But she didn't realize that when you lock a door meant for God, the house starts to burn from the inside out. Listen to the flickering shadows of the fire, for they tell a story older than the hills. In our village of Omodu, there lived a woman named Madara who had 2 daughters, Elina and Mara. Elina was the eldest, soft as the morning mist, with a heart that beat for the earth and the rain. Mara, the younger, was like a polished stone, bright, hard, and hungry for the sun. Madara loved them both, but she loved the pride of the family named Mor. She believed that the natural order of the world was a ladder, and Elina must climb first. When the seasons turned and both sisters married in the same harvest moon, the village rejoiced. But behind the closed doors of their hut, a dark shadow was growing. Madara watched with narrow eyes as Elina's belly remained flat, while Mara's glowed with the early warmth of life. To Madara, this was a blemish on the lineage. She could not bear the thought of the younger daughter blossoming before the elder. In the silence of the midnight hour, she visited the old one at the edge of the forest, carrying a pot of honey and a heavy secret. The old one lived where the trees whisper secrets to the wind. She took Madara's honey and gave her a small, rusted iron padlock that felt cold enough to freeze the soul. "If you lock this," the old one croaked, her eyes like dying embers, "the gates of life will close for the one you name. They shall remain shut until the firstborn has walked through her own gate." Madara did not hesitate. She whispered Mara's name into the iron and clicked the lock shut with a sound that echoed like a bone snapping. From that day on, a strange heaviness settled over Mara's home. The glow in her cheeks faded, replaced by a gray pallor that worried the village healers. Her husband, a kind man named Joro, brought her the sweetest fruits and the softest wool, but nothing could stir the life within her. The medicine men shook their heads, unable to find a physical cause for her sudden decline. Meanwhile, Madara spent her days brewing bitter herbs for Elina, forcing her to drink until she gagged. "You must carry the first seed," the mother would hiss, her fingers trembling with the weight of the hidden key beneath her robes. 3 months bled into seasons, and a strange silence fell over the 2 households. Elina grew pale and weary from her mother's constant pressure, her spirit breaking under the expectation of a miracle that would not come. She loved Mara dearly and wept at her sister's bedside, watching as the vibrant girl she once knew became a shadow of herself. Mara's belly, once promising, seemed to shrink back against her spine, as if the child inside was hiding from a great cold. The village began to whisper that a curse had fallen upon the house of Madara. People crossed the street when they saw the mother walking by, her face a mask of stubborn stone. Madara ignored them all, her mind fixed on the iron lock hidden in a wooden chest beneath her bed. She believed she was protecting the honor of the ages, ensuring that the river flowed in the right direction. But the river was starting to flood its banks in ways she had not predicted. One evening, Mara woke from a feverish sleep and gripped Elina's hand with terrifying strength. "Something has stolen the key to my house, sister," she whispered, her eyes wide and glassy. "I can feel the door is bolted from the outside." Elina's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. She looked into Mara's sunken eyes and saw a reflection of a truth she wasn't ready to face. That night, Elina could not sleep. The air in her mother's house felt thick and sour, smelling of old iron and wet earth. She waited until the rhythmic snoring of Madara filled the room, then she crept toward the wooden chest. Her fingers shook as she lifted the lid, the hinges groaning in the silence. Inside, hidden beneath layers of ceremonial cloth, she found the rusted padlock. It felt unnaturally heavy, as if it contained the weight of a mountain. Elina didn't know its purpose, but she felt a wave of coldness radiate from the metal. Just as she was about to touch it, a hand clamped down on her wrist. It was Madara, her face contorted in the moonlight, looking more like a ghost than a mother. "Touch not what is meant for the gods," Madara hissed, her voice a low growl. She snatched the lock away and shoved Elina back toward her mat. Your sister's delay is for your glory. Why do you seek to ruin what I have built for you? Glory built on pain is no glory at all, mother. Elina cried out, her voice breaking the stillness of the village. But Madara only laughed, a sound like dry leaves skittering on a grave. She tucked the lock into her bosom and refused to speak another word. From that night, the bond between mother and daughter soured into something bitter. Elina spent every waking moment at Mara's side, sharing her own strength to keep her sister alive. Mara was fading. Her skin grew translucent, and she spoke to people who weren't there. She talked of a golden gate that was barred with iron chains and a child crying in the dark. The village elders grew concerned, for the drought of life in one family often spread to the crops. Indeed, the yams in Madara's field began to rot in the soil, turning black and smelling of sulfur. Even the livestock refused to drink from the well near their hut. Madara ignored the signs, her obsession blinding her to the rot spreading through her world. She was waiting for Elina to show the first sign of life, believing that once the elder succeeded, she could simply unlock the gate for the younger. But the spirits of the ancestors do not like to be told which way to breathe. Another harvest came and went, and Elina remained as empty as a dried gourd. She grew thin, her beauty escaping through her eyes in a constant stream of tears. She watched her husband's face grow long with disappointment, though he tried to hide it for her sake. The weight of the secret she suspected her mother held was crushing her. One afternoon, Elina went to the great river to wash her clothes, and there she met the Old One, who was gathering moss from the slippery stones. The Old One looked at Elina and pointed a crooked finger at her belly. You search for fruit on a tree that has been cursed to provide the shade, the hag muttered. The lock that holds your sister also binds your own blood. A mother's greed is a knot that even time cannot untie without drawing blood. Elina fell to her knees, the cold water rushing over her legs. How do I break it? She begged. The Old One smiled, showing toothless gums. The key is hidden in the truth, but the truth will cost you the mother you thought you knew. Elina returned home with a heart made of flint. She no longer looked at Madara with love, but with the cold calculation of a hunter. She knew she had to find that lock and the key that opened it. But Madara had become paranoid. She carried the lock everywhere, tied in a pouch around her waist. She even slept with her hand clutching it. Meanwhile, Mara's condition turned dire. The village priestess was called, a woman named Omodu who could see the threads of fate. Omodu walked into Mara's hut and immediately covered her nose. The scent of frozen life is heavy here, Omodu declared, her voice booming. She turned to Madara, who stood in the corner, defiant. Woman, what have you done to the flow of the bloodline? The ancestors are angry. The child within this girl is not dead, but it is being held in a tomb of iron. If you do not release it, the earth will claim both the mother and the seed. Madara stood her ground, her face a mask of iron. I do nothing but uphold the honor of the firstborn, she replied coldly. The sun does not rise before the moon has finished its dance. Omodu sighed, a sound of deep sorrow. Then the sun shall burn you where you stand. That night, a terrible storm rolled over Omodu. Thunder shook the foundations of the huts, and lightning tore the sky into jagged pieces. In the chaos, Mara began to scream. It wasn't the scream of a woman in labor, but the scream of someone being torn apart by invisible hands. Elina ran to her sister, but the door to the hut was stuck, as if held by a giant's hand. Through the window, she saw Mara thrashing on the mat, her skin glowing with a sickly blue light. Madara stood in the center of the room, clutching her pouch, her eyes wide with terror. She realized she had lost control of the magic she had invited into her home. The padlock in her pouch began to grow hot, burning through the fabric and searing her skin. She screamed and tried to throw it away, but it stuck to her hand like a leech. The iron was melting into her flesh, and as it did, the screams of Mara grew louder, echoing the agony of the mother who had tried to play God with her children's lives. Elina finally burst through the door, her hair wild and soaked from the rain. She saw her mother struggling with the glowing metal and her sister gasping for air. Give it to me, Elina shouted, reaching for her mother's hand. Madara tried to pull away, but the heat was too much. The smell of burning flesh filled the room. With a final, desperate heave, Madara flung the molten lock toward the hearth. It landed in the fire with a hiss that sounded like 1,000 snakes. As the iron met the flames, the air in the hut seemed to pop. Mara fell silent, her body going limp. For a moment, Elina thought her sister was dead. She rushed to the bedside, her hands trembling as she touched Mara's neck. A faint, steady pulse beat against her fingers, but the victory was short-lived. Madara collapsed to the floor, her hand a blackened ruin, sobbing not for her pain, but for the loss of her control. "It is gone," Madara whispered, her voice a hollow rasp. "The gate is destroyed, but the path is still blocked. I have ruined us all." The storm passed, leaving the village in a state of eerie stillness. Mara survived, but she remained in a deep sleep from which no one could wake her. She lay like a marble statue, beautiful and unmoving. Madara was shunned by everyone, her hand never healed, remaining a twisted, charred claw that served as a constant reminder of her sin. Elina took over the care of both her sister and her broken mother. She worked the field alone, for no one would help the family of the Iron Mother. One night, as Elina sat by the fire, a shadow fell across the doorway. It was the old one. The lock was melted, but the spirit of the lock remains, the hag said, stepping into the light. To free the child, a sacrifice of the ego must be made. The one who closed the door must be the one to carry the burden of the opening. Elina looked at her mother, who was staring blankly into the ashes. "She is already broken," Elina said. The old one shook her head. "She is only sorry she was caught. She is not sorry for the deed. True regret is a fire that burns the soul clean." Days turned into weeks, and the village of Omodu began to suffer. The wells ran dry, and a strange fever began to take the young children of other families. The elders met in the square, their faces grim. "The curse of Madara is spreading," they whispered. "The iron in her heart has turned the very ground to stone." They decided that the family must be exiled to the forest of lost whispers. Elina pleaded for mercy, but the villagers were driven by fear. They gave the women one day to pack their belongings. Madara seemed indifferent, her mind wandering in a labyrinth of her own making. But as Elina began to pack their meager food, Mara's eyes suddenly fluttered open. She didn't look at Elina. She looked straight at Madara. "The child is tired of the dark, mother," Mara said, her voice sounding like it came from a great distance. "He says the iron is cold, but your heart is colder. He will not come out until you show him the way with a light that does not burn." Madara shivered, her first sign of true emotion in months. The journey to the forest of lost whispers was long and grueling. Elina pulled a small cart carrying Mara, while Madara walked behind, her head bowed. The forest was a place of twisted trees and silver moss, where the wind sounded like human voices. They found a small, abandoned hut and made it their home. Away from the judgment of the village, the weight of their situation settled heavily upon them. Madara began to change. In the silence of the woods, she could no longer escape the echoes of her daughter's suffering. She watched Elina's youthful strength wither away as she toiled to keep them fed. She watched Mara's stillness, a living death that she had authored. One night, Madara rose and walked into the deepest part of the woods. She knelt before an ancient oak and began to dig into the earth with her one good hand. She dug until her fingernails bled, crying out to the ancestors she had offended. "Take my life," she wailed. "Take my pride. Only let the child breathe. Let the gate open for the one I wronged." As she cried out, the silver moss began to glow. A figure emerged from the trees, not the old one, but a spirit of the forest, tall and draped in leaves. "You ask for life, but you still hold the key in your heart," the spirit said. "You locked the womb because you feared the shame of the younger surpassing the elder. To unlock it, you must accept the shame you feared." Madara looked up, her face streaked with dirt and tears. "I am the shame of my people," she whispered. "I am the rot in the grain." The spirit handed her a small, white stone. "Take this to your daughter. If she can forgive you, the stone will turn to gold. If she cannot, it will turn to lead, and the child will be lost forever. Madara took the stone and hurried back to the hut. She found Elina and Mara waiting in the doorway, the moonlight casting long shadows. Madara fell at Mara's feet, holding out the white stone. "I have no excuses left," she sobbed. "I am a mother who became a monster. Please, for the sake of the life I tried to steal, find it in you to look at me without hate." Mara looked at the stone, then at her mother's charred hand. She reached out and touched the blackened flesh. "The pain you felt when the iron melted," Mara asked softly, "was it for me, or for your lost pride?" Madara looked her daughter in the eye, her soul laid bare. "At first, it was for my pride, but every day since, it has been for the sound of the laugh I silenced in you. I would burn 1,000 times more to hear you sing again." The white stone began to pulse with a soft, warm light. It didn't turn to gold, and it didn't turn to lead. It turned into a clear, bright diamond that shone like a star. Mara took the stone and pressed it against her belly. A great warmth spread through the hut, smelling of jasmine and new rain. For the first time in years, the locked womb moved. A powerful kick vibrated through Mara's body, and she gasped, a genuine smile breaking across her face. The iron grip of the curse was loosening, but the ancestors required one final act of balance to restore the natural order. The diamond began to melt, turning into a liquid light that soaked into Mara's skin. Suddenly, the labor began. It was not a slow process, but a sudden, violent surge of life. Elina jumped into action, boiling water and preparing the mats, her movements fluid and sure. Madara sat by the door, acting as the guardian, her twisted hand resting on the threshold. She prayed with a fervor she had never known, her voice a steady hum that seemed to calm the wild spirits of the forest. Outside, the trees stopped whispering, and the wind died down. The animals of the forest gathered in the clearing, their eyes reflecting the light from the hut. It was a birth that felt like the beginning of the world. As his cry filled the air, the phantom in Madara's grip began to crumble. It turned into flakes of rust that were swept away by a sudden, warm breeze. Madara fell back, exhausted and broken, but she was smiling. The gate was open. The cycle was restored. The child was named Kojo, meaning born on a Monday, the day of new beginnings. He was a miracle, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the stars. With his birth, the forest of lost whispers began to change. The twisted trees straightened, and flowers bloomed in the middle of winter. The news of the miracle reached the village of Omodu, and the elders sent a delegation to investigate. They found the 3 women living in harmony, the child a beacon of joy in the wild. The elders saw the change in Madara, the way she looked at her daughters with humility, and the way she served them with her one good hand. They realized that the curse had been broken not by magic, but by a mother's true repentance. She often visited the forest, bringing gifts of grain and cloth to her mother and sister. Madara had become the forest's healer, using her knowledge of herbs to help those who were lost or hurting. She never sought forgiveness from the village, finding her peace in the quiet service of the woods. As Elina's time drew near, a strange thing happened. Mara arrived at the village, carrying Kojo on her back. She looked radiant, her skin glowing with health. "I have come to help my sister," she announced to the villagers, who stood aside in awe. The 2 sisters spent the final days of the pregnancy together, their bond stronger than any iron lock. When the labor began, it was Mara who held Elina's hand, whispered words of encouragement, and guided the new life into the world. Elina gave birth to a daughter, whom she named Amara, meaning grace. The 2 children, Kojo and Amara, grew up like twins, their lives intertwined by the magic of their survival. They were the pride of Omodu and the forest of lost whispers. But Madara remained in the woods, a solitary figure who watched the world from a distance. She knew her role in the story was a cautionary one, a reminder of what happens when love is poisoned by the need for control. Years passed, and the children grew into beautiful young adults. Kojo was a hunter of great skill, and Amara was a weaver whose patterns seemed to tell the history of the world. One day, they went to visit their grandmother in the forest. They found Madara sitting by the old oak tree, her eyes clouded with age. She called them close and took their hands, one healthy hand and one scarred. "Look at these hands," she whispered. One built a wall, and the other held the door open while the wall fell. "Never forget that the heart can be both the lock and the key. Choose to be the key, my children." That night, Madara passed away peacefully in her sleep. When the sisters found her, she was holding a small, rusted key that had appeared out of nowhere. It wasn't a key to any physical door, but a symbol of the freedom she had finally found within herself. They buried her beneath the oak tree, where the silver moss always glowed the brightest. The story of the Iron Mother became a legend in Omodu, passed down through generations. It was told to every mother who felt the sting of pride, and every daughter who felt the weight of expectation. The village thrived, and the drought of life never returned. But the most beautiful part of the legend was the Sisters' Dance, a festival held every harvest moon. Women would dance in pairs, holding a silken ribbon between them, symbolizing the flow of life that cannot be blocked. Elina and Mara lived to be very old, their hair turning as white as the diamond stone. They remained the closest of friends, their lives a testament to the power of forgiveness. They often sat on the porch of their shared home, watching their grandchildren play in the dust. "Do you remember the cold, sister?" Mara would ask. Elina would squeeze her hand and smile. "I only remember the warmth that followed, and the light that broke the iron." But legends have a way of leaving one small seed of mystery. In the chest where Madara had kept the lock, a new item was found by the youngest grandchild. It was a small carving of a mother holding two daughters, but the mother's hand was made of real gold. No one knew how it got there or who had carved it. Some said it was a gift from the forest spirits, a final mark of Madara's redemption. Others said it was the physical manifestation of the love that had survived the fire. Whatever its origin, the carving became a sacred relic for the family. It was passed down to the firstborn daughter of every generation, not as a symbol of rank, but as a reminder to protect her sisters. The greed that had once threatened to destroy them was replaced by a fierce, protective loyalty. The gate was not just open, it had been taken off its hinges entirely, allowing the spirit of the family to roam free and wild. And what of the old one? Some say she still wanders the forest of lost whispers, looking for those whose hearts are starting to turn to stone. She carries no honey now, only a mirror made of clear water. When she finds someone consumed by pride, she shows them their reflection, not as they are, but as they will become if they continue their path. Many have turned back because of her, finding the courage to unlock their own hearts before the iron sets in. The village of Omodu grew into a great city, but the grove in the forest remained untouched. It became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking healing or reconciliation. They say that if you listen closely to the wind in the trees, you can still hear the cry of a newborn baby and the soft, repentant sob of a mother who finally learned how to love without chains. As the fire dies down, my children, remember the lesson of Elina and Mara. Life is not a race to be won, but a river to be shared. When we try to dam the river for our own sake, we only succeed in drowning our own future. The womb, the earth, and the heart are all gates of life, and they must remain open for the world to breathe. Madara's regret was a heavy price to pay, but it bought a freedom that lasted for 1,000 years. Her scarred hand was a badge of honor in the end, for it showed she was willing to touch the fire to save what she had almost destroyed. So, sleep now and dream of golden keys and open doors. Let your hearts be soft like the morning mist, and your spirits be as free as the wind that blows through the forest of lost whispers. The elders say that even now, on the night of a Monday birth, a strange glow appears over the old oak tree in the forest. It is a light that warms the soul and chases away the shadows of the night. It is the light of a mother's love, finally purified and made whole. The story of the locked womb is a story of how we are all connected, and how the pain of one is the pain of all. But it is also a story of hope, for it reminds us that no lock is too strong for the power of a true apology. As you grow, remember to be the key for others, to celebrate their victories as if they were your own. For in the end, we are all travelers on the same path, seeking the same warmth, and hoping that when our time comes to walk through the gate, we find it standing wide open, waiting for us with a light that never fades. For more stories like this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel.